The U.S. Attorney General just delivering a summary of Robert Mueller's report to Congress in the form of a 4-page letter. Let's bring in Arthi Pohl right now. She's tracking this alongside us today. So let's begin with the key points of this inquiry. Arthi, what did William Barr say about the conclusions around collusion and obstruction of justice?
So what we know, of course, is that this is a summary that has been provided by William Barr of that Mueller report, which we know took about 22 months to investigate and compile that report. It was submitted over the weekend. Okay, so the letter specifically that was given to lawmakers is divided into two parts. As you mentioned, it is addressing collusion and obstruction of justice. Here are some of the key parts. We know that essentially they say that it did not, the special counsel's investigation did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia in its efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. It goes on to say within the course of this letter and in this specific part of it dealing with collusion, that the special counsel brought criminal charges against a number of Russian military officers for conspiring. But again, when it comes to whether or not the Trump campaign was involved, it says that the special counsel did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in these efforts, despite multiple offers from Russian-affiliated individuals to assist the Trump campaign. That is part one. Then we're going to move on to the obstruction of justice issue, which was another part of this investigation. And they do make clear here that they have had a thorough, factual investigation, part of the summation that was provided by the current U.S. Attorney General. What it does say is the special counsel did not draw a conclusion one way or the other as to whether the examined conduct constituted obstruction. So really leaving that decision up to the Attorney General, saying that they describe the facts of obstruction investigation without reaching any legal conclusion. And that really leaves it in the hands of the Attorney General. The report, it says in this specific letter, while it does not conclude the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. So those are just some of the very key parts that we are learning from this 4-page letter delivered to lawmakers just within the past few minutes now, Michael.
It's certainly breaking news right now as we continue to pour over the details, but very important, those two areas, because they were among the principal questions people had regarding collusion and possible obstruction of justice. So that said, as those conclusions are being laid out in this letter, what else are we learning from Barr in the summation that he sent to Congress here?
What we are learning is a little bit more about the investigation that essentially took place. And we've been talking about the fact that there have been nearly 36 indictments, but it doesn't appear that there are any more indictments that are coming from this specific Mueller investigation, from the special counsel's investigation. But let's quickly take a look at some of the resources that were essentially put into this investigation that were laid out in this letter. 19 lawyers, 40 FBI agents, 2,800 subpoenas were issued. In addition to that, we also know that there were nearly 500 search warrants that were executed, more than 230 orders for communication records, 13 requests to foreign governments for information, and nearly 500 witnesses who were interviewed. So that is some of the detail we're learning from the summary. Of course, been waiting for this for about 22 months, learning some of the details of this investigation, and just some new information that is coming across the wire right now from a senior Justice Department official saying that she does not know how long the Attorney General will take to determine which portions of the report will actually be made public. So this is all developing right now, and this is the latest that we know, Michael.
Okay, Arthi, thank you for that. And to underline for people at home, once again, from the letter that we're getting from the U.S. Attorney General on the issue of collusion, that they say the special counsel, Robert Mueller, did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in these efforts, despite multiple offers. And on the issue of obstruction of justice, the special counsel states that while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. So a lot still to dig into this 4-page letter released by the U.S. Attorney General in the last hour. So right now we're going to reach out once again to Roland Riopel. We spoke to him yesterday. He is a former federal prosecutor for the Southern District of New York. He joins us right now. So Roland, nice to have you on the program again. Let's begin with an overall impression here. What do you make of what has just been shared by Bill Barr?
I think this is really a victory for Mr. Trump at this point. He while not fully exonerated in all respects on the obstruction count, he's not subject to prosecution, according to Mr. Barr. After consultation with Mr. Rosenstein, they have decided that they would not be able to prove an obstruction count beyond a reasonable doubt against Mr. Trump, even if he were a private citizen. So while the evidence is very close on that one, and it's not a full exoneration, it's clear that the view of the Department of Justice is that it's not an appropriate case for prosecution. And even more important is the clear finding that there was no coordination or collusion between any member of the Trump campaign and the Russians. I think essentially what that means is that Paul Manafort probably was acting in his own interests when he was effectively colluding with the Russians, but without the knowledge of Mr. Trump and without the knowledge of the rest of the Trump campaign. I think that's the subtext here that we ought to bring out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to bring up here a response, and this is from Representative Nadler, who is in the U.S. Congress, because he says the following out of this 4-page summary. He says, quote, that he believes that this is now putting this case in the court of Congress. What do you think of that?
You know what? I think Representative Nadler may be overplaying his hand. I think at this point, there's plenty of other areas that Congress can investigate in its oversight capacity. I think these issues are now essentially put to bed. And I think there's so much else that Congress can spend its time on productively in terms of investigating the Trump administration. That's where it should focus its energies. But apparently Congressman Nadler doesn't agree with that and thinks he should go ahead and shoot this now dead horse.
Well, Congressman Nadler may not be alone here, because we know as yesterday, Nancy Pelosi did send out the letter, she being the Democratic House Speaker, and she already made it known that a summation or an assessment of the Mueller report would not be enough for Congress, nor should it be enough for the American people. She's demanding that the report be made public in full. Do you think that's actually going to happen, considering how much pressure there is right now? Fox News coming out with a poll saying that 80% of Americans do want the report to be released for everybody to see.
Yeah, I do think, well, and Attorney General Barr in his letter indicates that he's going to release a good portion of the report publicly, at least. And I think all of the report can be disclosed to those members of Congress who have the proper security clearance to see those items that require a high security clearance. So I think the entire report can be disclosed to some Congress people. I think it appears that Attorney General Barr is going to be committed to disclosing a significant part of the report to the public. And yes, I think it is important that the public and Congress see as much of the report as possible to assist them in making their judgments as to the Trump administration.
Mm-hmm. So let's back up a little bit for people at home, because again, this is a 4-page letter that was just sent out by William Barr, the U.S. Attorney General. And among the things that he says in this letter, that Russia did attempt to interfere in the 2016 campaign through social media, as well as trying to essentially hack into people's email accounts, as perhaps was done with the Democrats. We are also hearing from the U.S. Attorney General that based on what Robert Mueller found, that they found no evidence of collusion on Trump or the Trump team to be colluding with Russia during the campaign. And on the matter of obstruction of justice, the fact that they say that they cannot prove that Donald Trump committed a crime, but nor are they exonerating him, although you say you believe that this is basically putting this matter to rest. Is there any other opinion that might come up against this to challenge this 4-page summation, Roland?
Well, yes, I think there will be some liberal members of Congress who will decry this as a partisan exercise and insist on further investigation of these issues. It seems to me that if what they're after is political theater, there will be plenty of opportunity for that in this realm. But my own view is that Mr. Mueller's team, who I have great respect for, as well as for Mr. Mueller, has done a lot of digging here. And if they were not able to find the evidence to charge Mr. Trump with obstruction of justice, then I think that is an issue that has essentially now been resolved. And frankly, there is so much else for Congress to investigate. They ought to move on to that. That's just me.
What other matters of legal jeopardy, though? Because as you said to us yesterday, Donald Trump is not necessarily out of the legal woods, if you will, even if Mueller doesn't find him guilty.
That's right. Not in any way. The investigation of the payments that Mr. Trump made to two women with whom he had affairs right on the eve of the election. Mr. Trump has been named as an unindicted co-conspirator in that case. That is a case where the Department of Justice has concluded that he, in fact, did commit a crime. So that may be an area that would be more fruitful for Congress to go after, given the Department of Justice's finding. The investigation of the Trump inaugural commission or committee is one that certainly sounds like it's a valid area of investigation. The investigation of the Trump Charitable Foundation, which was shut down quite publicly by the New York State Attorney General, that's an area that's worthy of congressional investigation. Mr. Trump's continuing apparent violations of the Emoluments Clause by steering foreign money to his businesses like the Trump Hotel in Washington. Those sorts of conflicts are clearly appropriate areas for congressional oversight. And there are many, many more. So, there's a great deal of potential legal jeopardy for Mr. Trump going forward. And now that these issues are resolved, I think Congress ought to get on to the others.